All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Definitely. Always up for exploring the fascinating world of cells.
Well, today we're taking on a topic one of our listeners specifically requested, the MAPK oxidative stress pathway.
Oh, that's a good one. It's a critical pathway in cellular health and disease.
Yeah, and we're going to be using this awesome article from Assay Genie as our guide.
Great resource. They have some really clear explanations.
So I think it'd be helpful to start by, setting the stage. Why should our listener care about this pathway?
Well, think of it this way. This pathway is like the cellular 9/11 system.
Ooh, I like that.
It determines how our cells respond to stress, which, has massive implications for overall health.
Okay, so that's a pretty compelling reason to pay attention. But how does this 9/11 system actually work?
Right, so the MAPK pathway, it acts like a communication network inside our cells, like relaying critical info from the outside world all the way to the nucleus.
Where our DNA is stored.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So our cells are constantly bombarded with signals, right? Like changes in oxygen levels, the food we eat, even stress hormones.
Absolutely, all the time. And the MAPK pathway helps cells interpret and respond to these signals, especially when it comes to oxidative stress.
So oxidative stress, is that kind of like a flare alarm going off in the cell?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Oxidative stress basically signals danger, an imbalance between those harmful reactive oxygen species, or ROS, and the cell's defenses.
So how does the MAPK pathway, address that threat? How does it put out the fire, so to speak?
Okay, picture this. A relay race
Love a good relay race.
with three runners. The first runner, MAP3K, gets the signal, the oxidative stress alarm. It passes the baton to the second runner, MAP2K.
Okay, I'm following.
And then MAP2K passes it to the final runner, MATK.
Three-legged race at the cellular level.
Right, but instead of a finish line, they're carrying that signal into the nucleus, the control center of the cell.
So they're basically carrying that stress signal right to the heart of the cell, the DNA.
Exactly. And that relay system, it ensures the signal gets amplified, leading to a rapid and robust response to the oxidative stress.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture, but the article also mentions these things called redox-sensitive kinases.
Oh, yeah. Those are key players. They're kind of like the switchboard operators for the whole system.
The ones directing the signals where to go.
Oh, exactly. And what makes them unique is they can be directly activated by oxidative modifications.
So it's like oxidative stress flips a switch.
Exactly. Turning on the MAPK pathway.
Wow, that's pretty efficient. So we've got our 9/11 system, our relay race, and our switchboard operators. But the article goes on to talk about three modules within the pathway: JNK, P38, and ERK. What makes these modules different from each other?
So each of those plays a distinct role in how the cell responds to oxidative stress. Think of J&K as the conductor of an orchestra.
Orchestrating the response, I like it.
It activates transcription factors like AT1, which are kind of like musical notes. They tell the cell which genes to turn on or off.
Wow, so it's basically controlling the cell's fate in response to that stress.
Precisely. It can determine whether a cell survives the stress or undergoes apoptosis, which is a form of programmed cell death.
Whoa, life or death decisions.
Yeah.
High stakes.
Right. Now, P38 is like the stage crew, making sure everything runs smoothly, even under all that pressure.
Okay, so damage control. Trying to keep the show running.
Yes. It helps cells withstand various stresses, including oxidative stress, and it modulates transcription factors, which is like fine-tuning those musical notes for the best possible outcome.
Wow, so J&K is the conductor, P38 is the stage crew. But what about ERK? That was a little confusing to me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because ERK is usually associated with growth and survival, but the article says it's also involved in the oxidative stress response. It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, you'd think a growth promoter wouldn't be helpful when a cell's under attack.
Right, exactly.
But ERK actually has this fascinating dual role. By regulating gene expression, it promotes the production of anti-apoptotic factors.
So it's kind of like the medic backstage patching up the performers so they can keep going.
Exactly. It's all about balance. J&K assesses the damage, P38 tries to build up resilience, and ERK focuses on damage repair and survival.
This is incredible. It's like there's this whole tiny universe happening inside every single one of our cells.
It is pretty amazing, right? Yeah, it's like this complex dance, really. All those modules working together, sometimes in harmony, sometimes, a little bit of competition, to decide the cell's fate under stress.
This is blowing my mind. Seriously, this whole tiny universe happening inside of every one of our cells.
Yeah.
But Thinking back to why our listener wanted to dive into this topic, why should all of this matter to them?
Well, understanding the MAPK oxidative stress pathway, it's crucial if you're interested in, like, cellular health and disease.
So it's relevant whether you're, deep into research on aging or just curious about how your body handles everyday stress.
Exactly. It's a fundamental piece of the puzzle.
So it's not just about responding to damage.
Yep.
It's also about how cells manage all their everyday processes.
Absolutely. This pathway is also involved in regulating normal cellular things like growth, development, even learning and memory.
Wow. Okay, so this pathway's busy. It's a multitasker. But what happens when this intricate dance, goes wrong?
Well, that's when we see the link between the MAPK pathway and various diseases when it's dysregulated.
Dysregulated.
Yeah, meaning it's either overactive or underactive. It can contribute to like a whole range of conditions.
Like what kind of conditions? Can you give us some examples?
Think about neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Oxidative stress plays a major role.
Right.
And dysregulation of the MAPK pathway can really make that neuronal damage worse.
So in these cases, it's like the cellular 9/11 system is overwhelmed.
Exactly. And it's not just neurodegenerative diseases. Dysregulation of this pathway is also linked to cardiovascular diseases, inflammatory conditions,
Right.
and even cancer.
So this tiny pathway has huge implications for our health, which is probably why researchers are so interested in it as a potential target for therapies, right?
Precisely. Understanding how this pathway goes wrong in different diseases, it opens up exciting possibilities for like new treatments. Imagine being able to fine-tune this pathway, restore balance, and protect cells from damage.
Now we're talking. Can you give us some examples of how this pathway could be targeted, like for treatment?
Sure. For example, in neurodegenerative diseases, some researchers are looking into drugs that modulate the MAPK pathway.
To try to reduce that oxidative stress.
Exactly,
Right.
and protect those neurons. And then in cancer, where the MAPK pathway is often overactive, scientists are developing drugs that inhibit specific parts of the pathway.
So in cancer, the strategy is to quiet down those overactive signals, prevent that uncontrolled growth.
Precisely. It's all about restoring balance to this delicate dance that's happening in our cells. But we're not limited to just traditional drugs. The future of therapeutic interventions for this pathway, it's really exciting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give us a glimpse into the future. What are researchers working on?
Well, scientists are exploring these cutting-edge technologies, like gene editing, nanotechnology, to really precisely target components of the MAPK pathway.
Wow.
Imagine being able to correct a genetic defect that's causing that dysregulation, or delivering drugs directly to affected cells using nanoparticles.
That sounds straight out of science fiction,
Yeah.
but also incredibly promising.
It is. And another fascinating area of research is the role of the microbiome in modulating the MAPK pathway.
Wait, the microbiome, you mean the trillions of bacteria living in our gut?
Yeah, emerging evidence suggests that the gut microbiome can actually influence oxidative stress levels in our cells and impact the activity of the MAPK pathway. It's amazing how interconnected everything is.
So what we eat, the balance of bacteria in our gut, it could impact how our cells handle stress.
It really does highlight the need to look at the bigger picture when we're studying these cellular signaling pathways. There's so much we're still discovering.
It's kind of humbling,
It is.
This has been a mind-blowing journey so far. We've covered the basics of the MAPK cascade, the role of oxidative stress, the different modules, how they all work together, even the potential for new therapies. But before we wrap up, I want to get your expert perspective. What stands out to you about this pathway? What keeps you up at night?
Honestly, it's the complexity and how much we still don't know. It's like we've only just scratched the surface.
Like we zoomed in on this one tiny pathway and found this whole world.
Exactly. And, the more we learn, the more we realize there's so much more to discover. Like we're only just beginning to understand how the MAPK pathway interacts with other signaling pathways.
It's not isolated.
No, not at all. It's part of a much bigger network.
So it's like realizing the cellular 911 system is connected to all these other emergency response teams.
Exactly. And that makes it even more challenging to study, to really try to manipulate it. But it also opens up so many possibilities for, new therapies.
You mentioned earlier that the future of therapies is really exciting. Can you expand on that a bit?
Well, I think we're on the verge of a huge change in medicine, moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach towards something much more personalized.
So instead of giving everyone the same drug, we're tailoring treatments based on an individual's needs.
Exactly. And the MAPK pathway, it's going to be a key player in this. Imagine a future where we can, analyze your genetic makeup.
Your own personal blueprint.
Yeah, and your MAPK pathway activity to see your risk for certain diseases
Mhm.
and develop personalized prevention strategies.
That's amazing. It's like a custom-designed health plan.
Right. And the treatments themselves are evolving too. We're
Sure.
already seeing a shift towards targeted therapies that go after the underlying molecular defects.
Instead of just trying to dampen down the entire pathway.
Yeah, and as we learn more about the MAPK pathway, we'll be able to make those treatments even more precise, more effective.
So we could actually activate some parts of the pathway while inhibiting others.
Exactly, depending on the specific disease and the person's individual needs.
This is mind-blowing stuff. It sounds like the future of medicine is incredibly bright.
It is. And it's not just about developing new drugs. We're also exploring things like gene editing, nanotechnology, even using the power of the microbiome.
Wow, it's incredible to think that we might one day be able to reprogram our cells to fight disease.
The possibilities really are endless, but it all starts with curiosity.
Well, you've definitely sparked our curiosity today. This deep dive into the MAPK oxidative stress pathway has been incredible. We've gone from the basics to talking about personalized therapies. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk about this stuff.
And a huge thank you to our listener for suggesting this topic
Yeah.
and for sending in that awesome article.
Yeah, it was a great resource.
Before we sign off, we want to leave you with something to ponder. As research continues, what breakthroughs do you envision in this field? How might these discoveries change the way we think about health and disease? And how might they lead to even more revolutionary treatments? Keep exploring. Stay curious. Maybe you'll be the one to make those groundbreaking discoveries. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.